What started with a few pixels bouncing across a screen has evolved into virtual worlds more immersive than we could have ever imagined. I'm talking about video games. The entertainment medium that went from arcade cabinets to global phenomenon faster than any other in history. Welcome to 50 Years of Video Games, where we'll journey through 5 decades of gaming evolution. From the coin-operated machines that ate your allowance, to the consoles under your TV and the devices in your pocket. This is the story of how video games conquered the world. In 2024, gaming is a $180 billion global industry, bigger than movies and music combined. But it wasn't always this way. So grab your controller, power up, and let's press start on this adventure through gaming history. Whether you're a day one arcade veteran or someone who just downloaded their first mobile game, this is your story too. Because gaming isn't just about technology. It's about the memories we've made, the worlds we've explored, and the friends we've connected with along the way. Let's begin where it all started, with a quarter and a dream. Before gaming invaded our homes, it lived in bowling alleys, convenience stores, and dedicated arcades. Magical places where a pocket full of quarters could buy you an afternoon of entertainment and bragging rights. It all began commercially in 1971 with Computer Space, a science fiction game housed in a futuristic fiberglass cabinet. Created by Nolan Bushnell, it looked amazing, but played like you needed an engineering degree to understand it. Bushnell learned his lesson and founded Atari, where his next game would change everything. That game was Pong. 2 paddles, 1 ball, and the simple instruction: avoid missing ball for high score. Released in 1972, the first Pong cabinet was installed at Andy Capp's Tavern in California. The next day, the owner called Atari with a problem. The machine had stopped working. The issue? It was so stuffed with quarters that it couldn't accept any more. By 1975, Pong had earned Atari $35 million, about $175 million in today's money. But the true arcade explosion came with Space Invaders in 1978. Created by Taito in Japan, it triggered a nationwide coin shortage as players pumped 100 yen coins into machines faster than they could be circulated. The game introduced high scores, giving players eternal glory, or at least until someone unplugged the machine. Arcades became the hangout spots of a generation. Dark rooms illuminated by CRT screens, hands cramping from joystick movements, and pockets empty of quarters. By 1982, Americans were spending $8 billion annually at arcades. That's more than they spent on movies and recorded music combined. The golden age of arcades gave us iconic games that still resonate today. Pac-Man Fever swept the world in 1980, becoming the first gaming mascot and grossing over $1 billion in quarters by 1990. Ms. Pac-Man followed as one of the first games designed with female players in mind. Donkey Kong introduced us to a mustachioed plumber, originally named Jumpman, who would later become gaming's most recognizable hero. And games like Asteroids, Centipede, and Defender pushed the boundaries of what arcade experiences could be. But while we were busy pumping quarters into machines, a revolution was brewing that would bring these experiences into our living rooms. The arcade era was just the beginning. Gaming was about to get personal. While arcade cabinets were gobbling quarters, engineers were figuring out how to shrink that experience into something that could connect to your TV. The Magnavox Odyssey had attempted this in 1972, but it was the Atari 2600, released in 1977, that truly brought the arcade home. With its iconic wood-paneled design and joystick controllers, the Atari 2600 wasn't just a toy. It was a portal to new worlds. At $199, about $900 today, it wasn't cheap. But that didn't stop families from snatching up 30 million units over its lifetime. The system launched with 9 games, including Combat, which came bundled with the console. But it was titles like Adventure, which featured the first known Easter egg in gaming history, and Pitfall, that showed what home gaming could be. The success of the 2600 opened the floodgates. Suddenly, everyone wanted in on the gold rush. Mattel released the Intellivision in 1979. Coleco joined with ColecoVision. Even Magnavox returned with the Odyssey Squared. By 1982, video games were a $3.8 billion industry in America alone, dominated by Atari with 80% market share. But as the saying goes, what rises quickly can fall just as fast. The video game crash of 1983 was a financial disaster that nearly killed the industry in North America. The market was flooded with consoles and poorly made games. Retailers were stuck with unsold inventory. Atari, overconfident in its position, made a series of catastrophic mistakes. The most infamous was E.T., the Extraterrestrial. Given just 5 weeks to develop a game based on the blockbuster movie, programmer Howard Scott Warshaw created what many consider the worst game of all time. Atari produced 4 million cartridges, but sold only 1.5 million. The unsold inventory was famously buried in a New Mexico landfill. Between 1983 and 1985, industry revenues plummeted by 97%. Atari went from making $3.2 billion to losing $536 million. Companies collapsed. Thousands lost their jobs. Many retailers declared video games a passing fad and refused to stock them. Gaming needed a hero, and it would find one in the most unlikely place: a playing card company from Kyoto, Japan. A 100-year-old Japanese company that had previously made playing cards and toys was about to resurrect the industry. with a gray box and a promise of quality. Nintendo had found success in Japan with its Famicom system and was looking to expand globally. But American retailers, burned by the crash, wanted nothing to do with video games. So Nintendo rebranded its system as an entertainment system and included a robotic buddy named Rob to make it seem more like a toy than a console. The Nintendo Entertainment System launched in America in 1985 with a strict quality control policy. Every game featured the Nintendo seal of quality, assuring parents that these weren't the buggy messes that had tanked Atari. Nintendo also restricted developers to releasing just 5 games per year, preventing market oversaturation. The system's killer app was Super Mario Bros., a game so well designed it's still studied by developers today. The side-scrolling adventure sold over 40 million copies and made Mario a household name. Suddenly, playground conversations revolved around warp pipes and mushroom kingdoms. Nintendo didn't stop there. The Legend of Zelda created an expansive world to explore. Metroid featured a surprise female protagonist. Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest established Japanese RPGs. And games like Mega Man, Castlevania, and Contra created entire genres that still thrive today. In 1990, Nintendo commanded 90% of the American video game market, selling over 30 million NES consoles. Nintendo wasn't just a company, it was a cultural force that had children across America begging their parents for just 5 more minutes before bedtime. But Nintendo's dominance wasn't limited to the living room. In 1989, they released the Game Boy, a handheld system that let you take gaming anywhere. Despite its monochrome screen and limited power, the combination of portability and battery life made it irresistible. The inclusion of Tetris, a puzzle game so addictive it's been shown to occupy cognitive space in players' brains even when not playing, helped the Game Boy and its successors sell 118 million units. However, Nintendo's strict control over its ecosystem was creating frustration among developers and opportunity for competitors. A challenger was emerging, a company with attitude, a blue mascot, and a battle cry. Genesis does what Nintendo don't. The console wars were about to begin. If the 80s were Nintendo's playground, the 90s brought serious competition. Sega, an arcade giant that had struggled in the 8-bit console market, came roaring back with the Genesis, or Mega Drive outside North America, and a new mascot designed specifically to challenge Mario. Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't just a character, he was an attitude. While Mario carefully jumped through his colorful world, Sonic blazed through loops and corkscrews at blistering speed. The blue blur embodied the 90s ethos of being extreme, radical, and in your face. The marketing reflected this with the iconic slogan, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." Nintendo responded with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991, featuring improved graphics, sound, and the innovative Mode 7 scaling that created the illusion of 3D environments. The battle between the two companies was fierce, with each holiday season becoming a new front in the console wars. The 16-bit era also saw arcades reach new heights with fighting games. Street Fighter II created a global phenomenon where players would line up quarters on arcade cabinets to challenge champions. The competitive scene it fostered would eventually evolve into today's esports. Mortal Kombat pushed boundaries with its bloody fatalities, leading to congressional hearings, and eventually the creation of the ESRB rating system we still use today. Technology was evolving rapidly. CD-ROM drives offered storage capacity that dwarfed cartridges, allowing for full-motion video, voice acting, and more complex games. Sega attempted to leverage this with add-ons like the Sega CD and 32X, while Nintendo partnered with Sony to develop a CD attachment for the SNES. That partnership would collapse, with Sony deciding to develop their own console instead, a decision that would reshape the industry in the coming years. Nintendo had sold 49 million SNES units worldwide, compared to Sega's 30+ million Genesis systems. But the real winner was gaming culture, which had matured and expanded beyond kids to include teenagers and young adults. The groundwork was being laid for an even bigger revolution: the leap to 3 dimensions. The mid-90s marked gaming's most significant technical leap: the transition from flat sprites to polygonal 3D environments. Suddenly, characters could move not just left and right, but forward, backward, and into worlds that felt limitless. This revolution came with new players entering the console battlefield. Sony, rebounding from its failed Nintendo partnership, launched the PlayStation in 1994. With a focus on 3D capabilities and more mature games, it appealed to the aging Nintendo and Sega fans who'd grown up with gaming. The PlayStation also switched from cartridges to CDs, giving developers more storage at lower production costs, about $10 per disc compared to $25 for cartridges. This allowed for full-motion video, orchestral soundtracks, and voice acting that brought games closer to cinematic experiences. No game exemplified this better than Final Fantasy VII. Released in 1997, its pre-rendered backgrounds, emotional storytelling, and memorable characters showed that games could deliver experiences as powerful as any film. Its success helped establish Japanese RPGs in Western markets, and proved games could make players cry, something unimaginable in the bleeps and bloops era. Nintendo responded to the 3D challenge with the Nintendo 64 in 1996. Though it stuck with cartridges, limiting storage capacity, legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto used this constraint to create some of gaming's most influential titles. Super Mario 64 reinvented platforming for 3 dimensions with a camera system and control scheme that games still use today. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time perfected 3-dimensional adventure games, earning perfect scores from critics and setting standards for world design. And GoldenEye 007 proved first-person shooters could work on consoles, featuring a multiplayer mode that defined dorm room competitions for years. Sega's entry into 3-dimensional was the Saturn, which struggled due to its complex architecture and surprise early launch that caught developers off guard. Their follow-up, the Dreamcast, was ahead of its time with online capabilities and innovative games, but it arrived too late to save Sega's console business. By 2000, the landscape had dramatically shifted. PlayStation had sold over 100 million units, dominating the market. Nintendo had maintained profitability, but lost significant market share. And Sega was preparing to exit hardware entirely, becoming a third-party developer. The 3D revolution had matured games from simple diversions to complex artistic expressions and reshaped the industry's power structure. But while consoles fought for the living room, another platform was quietly building the future of gaming: the personal computer. While console wars grabbed headlines, personal computers were pioneering gameplay innovations that would eventually reshape all of gaming. Without the restrictions of console manufacturers, PC developers could push boundaries, experiment with new ideas, and create directly for their audiences. The PC revolution began with id Software and 1993's Doom, a first-person shooter that rendered 3D environments so efficiently it could run on office computers, leading to countless hours of productivity loss as employees blasted demons during work hours. Doom wasn't just a game. It was a cultural phenomenon that sold over 10 million copies and established the FPS as a dominant genre. The PC also gave birth to real-time strategy games. Westwood Studios' Command & Conquer and Blizzard's Warcraft series put players in control of entire armies, combining quick thinking with strategic planning. StarCraft elevated this formula with perfectly balanced factions and a competitive scene that became a national sport in South Korea, filling stadiums with cheering fans years before esports became mainstream elsewhere. Half-Life revolutionized storytelling by never breaking player immersion, telling its story through the environment rather than cutscenes. More importantly, it embraced modding, allowing players to create their own content. One such mod, Counter-Strike, started as a fan project and grew into one of the most played games in the world. The Sims broke new ground by appealing beyond traditional gaming demographics. Created by Will Wright, it had no objectives beyond those you created yourself. build houses, form relationships, and live virtual lives. With 16 million copies sold, it proved games didn't need conflict to be compelling and attracted a player base that was over 60% female at a time when gaming was marketed primarily to males. But perhaps the PC's most transformative contribution was connecting players online in persistent worlds. Ultima Online and EverQuest pioneered the MMORPG, creating virtual societies where thousands of players could interact. This culminated with World of Warcraft in 2004, which peaked at 12 million subscribers paying monthly fees, creating a social phenomenon where people formed real friendships and even marriages through their virtual adventures. PC gaming had shown that games could be more than just entertainment. They could be creative platforms, social spaces, and even professional competitions. This experimental spirit would soon influence all of gaming, while a revolution was brewing that would bring video games to entirely new audiences. For decades, gaming had primarily targeted enthusiasts willing to learn complex controls and invest significant time. But in the mid-2000s, the industry discovered an untapped market. Everyone else. Nintendo led this revolution with the Wii in 2006. Rather than competing on graphical power with Sony's PlayStation 3 and Microsoft's Xbox 360, Nintendo created an intuitive motion control system that anyone could understand. Suddenly, grandparents were bowling in living rooms, families were having dance competitions, and 101 million Wii consoles were sold worldwide. Nintendo DS achieved similar success in the handheld market, with its touchscreen making games more approachable. Brain-training games and accessible titles like Nintendogs appealed to people who'd never considered themselves gamers. But the biggest expansion came from the device already in everyone's pocket. When Apple launched the App Store in 2008, gaming broke free from dedicated devices entirely. Suddenly, anyone with a smartphone had access to thousands of games, often free or priced at just 99 cents. Angry Birds exemplified this new paradigm. Simple to learn, difficult to master, playable in short bursts, and wildly addictive. Downloaded over 4 billion times, it became a cultural icon, spawning merchandise, animated series, and even a feature film. Candy Crush Saga introduced the world to the free-to-play model with optional microtransactions. Its simple match-3 gameplay hooked millions of players across demographics that traditional gaming had never reached, generating over $1.5 billion annually at its peak. Then, there was Minecraft, a game so simple in concept, yet limitless in execution, that it became the best-selling video game of all time with 238 million copies sold. What began as one Swedish developer's side project became a cultural phenomenon, educational tool, and creative platform used in schools worldwide. Microsoft recognized its value, acquiring it for $2.5 billion in 2014. These new platforms democratized game development. Small teams could create hits without publisher backing. Games like Flappy Bird, developed by a single person in Vietnam, could generate $50,000 daily in ad revenue at its peak. The barriers to both playing and creating games had never been lower. By 2015, grandparents were playing Candy Crush, parents were enjoying Wii Sports, and children were building worlds in Minecraft. Gaming was no longer defined by demographics. It had become universal. And with this expanded audience, the stage was set for gaming's final evolution into a dominant cultural force. In the last decade, video games have transcended their status as mere entertainment to become social spaces, competitive sports, and cultural phenomena that rival any medium in history. The Battle Royale genre exploded with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and Fortnite, the latter becoming less of a game and more of a digital hangout space for an entire generation. With over 350 million registered players and partnerships with Marvel, Star Wars, and major musical artists, Fortnite became a platform where shared experiences, like Travis Scott's virtual concert, attended by 12.3 million concurrent players, created moments as culturally significant as any real-world event. Esports evolved from niche competitions to mainstream entertainment, with dedicated arenas, professional teams, and viewership that rivals traditional sports. The 2022 League of Legends World Championship drew 532 million viewers, more than the Super Bowl. Top players became celebrities, with sponsorship deals and social media followings in the millions. Virtual reality finally made the leap from science fiction to consumer product, with Oculus Rift and PlayStation VR bringing immersive experiences to homes. While not yet achieving mainstream adoption, VR continued to evolve with Meta's Quest headsets, removing the need for external hardware and showing the potential for virtual social spaces beyond gaming. The industry's business models transformed with games as a service, replacing traditional one-time purchases. Titles like Fortnite, Apex Legends, and Call of Duty Warzone offered free-to-play experiences supported by cosmetic microtransactions and battle passes, keeping player bases unified rather than fragmented by paid expansions. Cross-platform play became standard, allowing friends to play together regardless of their chosen device. The console wars evolved from closed ecosystems to service competition, with subscription services like Xbox Game Pass offering hundreds of games for a monthly fee. Gaming's answer to Netflix. From bleeping arcade cabinets to photorealistic worlds in our pockets, gaming has evolved more in 50 years than perhaps any entertainment medium in history. What began as simple diversions have become spaces where friendships form, stories unfold, and creativity flourishes. The next decade promises even more transformation. Cloud gaming services are removing hardware limitations entirely. Artificial intelligence is generating dynamic worlds and characters that respond to our choices in increasingly human ways. Augmented reality will blend virtual experiences with our physical world. But technology has always been just the canvas. The true magic of gaming comes from how it connects us. The shared triumph of defeating a difficult boss with friends. The wonder of exploring a world that couldn't exist in reality. The emotional impact of experiencing stories where we're not just observers, but participants. In 50 years, gaming has grown from a niche hobby to a universal language. Children who grew up with Atari now play games with their grandchildren. Friendships form across continents through shared virtual adventures. And the definition of what constitutes a game continues to expand in ways we couldn't have imagined. As technology continues to advance, one thing remains certain. We're still in the early levels of what gaming will become. The most exciting chapters in this story haven't been written yet. And just like in the best games, the journey forward is filled with unlimited possibilities. Thank you for joining me on this trip through gaming history. Whether you're a day one arcade veteran or downloaded your first game yesterday, you're part of this ongoing story. So what are you waiting for? Press start and let's see what the next level brings.